The red light on the camera blinked off as Jasper Hale wrapped up the evening news broadcast with his usual polished smile. But as he stepped off the set at the bustling New York studio, his phone exploded with notifications, and the first text from Ezra made his blood run cold. They know. It's everywhere. Jasper raced through the crowded streets of Manhattan, his mind reeling from the image that had just gone viral. A candid shot of him and Ezra sharing breakfast in their cozy Brooklyn brownstone, arms casually draped around each other in a way that left no room for doubt. How had it happened? They had been so careful for 5 long years, keeping their love hidden behind closed doors while Jasper built his career as one of the most trusted faces on national television. Now the secret that had defined their relationship was out, and the network's response was swift and unforgiving. An email from the executive producer landed in his inbox just as he hailed a cab. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Address this or consider your contract void. By the time Jasper burst through the apartment door, Ezra was pacing the living room, his usually calm eyes wide with worry. Jasper, I don't know what to say. 1 minute we're planning our quiet anniversary dinner. The next the whole world's speculating about us. Ezra pulled him into a tight embrace, the kind that had always grounded them through smaller storms. But this was different. This was the kind of exposure that could end everything Jasper had worked for. The late nights studying journalism, the relentless climb from local reporter to primetime anchor at Horizon News. They sat on the couch, the city lights twinkling outside like indifferent stars. Ezra, a talented freelance photographer whose lens captured the raw beauty of urban life, had always been the steady one, content with their private world. We can fight this, he said softly, but Jasper could hear the tremor in his voice. The pressure from society had always lingered in the background, but now it was front and center. Jasper's thoughts drifted to his parents back in Texas, devout churchgoers who still asked when he'd bring home a nice girl. How would they react? And what about the loyal friends like Alex, who had suspected but never pushed? As the night wore on, the comments flooded in online, some supportive, many vicious. Jasper felt the psychological weight crushing him, the fear of losing not just his job, but his identity as the composed professional everyone admired. Decisions had to be made, and fast. The next morning's meeting loomed like a guillotine. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would test every bond in his life and force him to choose between the man he loved and the life he had built. Flashbacks hit him in waves as he tried to sleep. He remembered the night they met 5 years earlier at a small gallery opening in Soho. Ezra had been photographing the event, his quiet focus drawing Jasper in immediately. One conversation about light and truth in photography turned into hours of talking, and by the end of the night Jasper knew he had found someone who saw the world the same way he did, beautifully, honestly, but always from the shadows. Moving in together had been a risk, but they made it work with separate entrances and careful routines. Weekends in the Catskills disguised as solo hiking trips, quiet dinners where they never posted photos. It had felt safe. Until now. Morning came too soon. Jasper stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie, the same navy one he wore for every important broadcast. Ezra handed him coffee, their fingers brushing with a familiarity that suddenly felt dangerous. Whatever happens in that meeting, I'm here, Ezra said. Jasper nodded, but the knot in his stomach tightened. At the network headquarters, the boardroom felt colder than usual. Executives in crisp suits stared at him across the polished table. Jasper, the board has decided, the producer began. We cannot have this kind of distraction. Either you issue a statement denying the relationship and move out publicly, or we terminate your contract effective immediately. The decision is yours by end of day. The words landed like punches. Jasper walked out numb, the city noise blurring around him. He had built his entire adult life around this job, around being the reliable voice America trusted at 6 o'clock. Now it was slipping away, and the only constant was the man waiting for him at home. The drive back to Brooklyn gave him too much time to think. What would his colleagues say? The loyal production assistant who always brought him extra scripts? The rival anchor Derek who had smiled a little too wide when the photo leaked? Jasper pulled into the garage and sat in the car for a long minute before heading upstairs. Ezra met him at the door, reading the truth on his face before any words were spoken. They held each other in silence, the weight of the ultimatum pressing down. Outside, the first news vans were already parking across the street. The storm had arrived. Jasper closed the blinds against the growing crowd of reporters below, but the flashing lights still pierced through the slats like accusations. Ezra stood at the kitchen island chopping vegetables for a dinner neither of them felt like eating, his movements mechanical. "Your parents called twice while you were gone," he said quietly. Jasper's stomach dropped. He had avoided thinking about them all day, but the phone in his hand now showed 3 missed calls from Texas. With a deep breath he dialed, putting it on speaker so Ezra could hear. His mother's voice came through first, shaky. "Jasper, honey, what is this nonsense on the internet? They're saying you're living with a man." His father's gruff tone followed. "Son, tell me it's a mistake. We raised you right. This isn't you." The conversation spiraled into tears and scripture quotes, each word carving deeper into Jasper's chest. He tried to explain, but the line went dead after his father muttered, "We need time to pray on this." Ezra placed a hand on his shoulder, but Jasper shrugged it off gently, the rejection from home mixing with the rejection from work. "They'll come around," Ezra offered, though doubt clouded his own eyes. His own family back in California had always been supportive. His sister had even met Jasper once during a secret visit, but that only highlighted how divided their worlds were. Later that evening, Alex arrived unannounced, their college roommate and the one straight friend who had known the truth for years. "Dude, I saw the photo. I'm so sorry." Alex's hug was genuine, but his next words carried weight. "Derek from the station texted me. He's telling everyone he suspected it all along and that you used company resources to hide it." Jasper froze. Derek, the ambitious co-anchor who had been gunning for the weekend slot, had always been friendly on camera. Now the betrayal stung. "He leaked it," Jasper whispered. Alex shook his head. "I don't know for sure, but the timing, be careful." That night the three of them sat up talking, the conversation shifting from strategy to memories. Ezra pulled out an old photo album, images of their hidden trips to Vermont where they hiked hand in hand under the trees. "Remember when we almost got caught at that bed and breakfast?" He laughed softly. Jasper smiled for the first time all day, but the laughter faded when his phone buzzed again. This time a text from the network's PR team demanding a decision by noon tomorrow. The psychological pressure built like a storm cloud. Jasper lay awake beside Ezra, staring at the ceiling, questioning every choice that had led them here. Was love worth losing the career he had sacrificed friendships and family holidays for? Ezra's steady breathing beside him was the only anchor. By morning the tabloids had run wild. "America's favorite anchor hiding gay life," screamed one headline. Jasper read them in silence while Ezra made breakfast, the smell of eggs and toast filling the apartment they might soon lose. A knock at the door brought more bad news, neighbors complaining about the media trucks blocking the street. Ezra stepped outside to talk to them, calm and polite as always, but Jasper watched from the window as cameras swarmed him. The misunderstanding spread fast. One reporter shouted, "Is Ezra using you for fame?" Jasper's blood boiled. He wanted to run down and defend the man he loved, but the contract clause about public behavior kept him frozen. Alex called again with updates from inside the station. "People are split. Some are supportive, others think you betrayed the network's family image." The word family hit hard. Jasper's own family back home had stopped answering texts. His sister sent a single message, "Mom's crying. Dad won't talk. I love you, but this is hard." The rifts were widening, and Jasper felt each one like a physical wound. Ezra suggested they take a walk in the park after dark to clear their heads, but even that simple act felt impossible with paparazzi lurking. Instead, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city move on below. "Whatever you decide about the job," Ezra said, "I'll stand by you, even if it means I move out for a while." The offer was selfless, but it tore at Jasper. The thought of losing their shared home, their shared life, made the decision feel impossible. The night stretched long, filled with quiet conversations about what acceptance really meant when the world demanded you choose sides. The morning of the deadline dawned gray and heavy. Jasper dressed in his best suit, the one he wore for election coverage, as if armor could protect him from the meeting ahead. Ezra kissed him at the door, a lingering touch that said more than words. "Call me the second you're out." At the network tower, security had doubled because of the crowds outside. Inside the same boardroom, the executives waited with printed copies of the leaked photo. Jasper, we've given you time, the producer said. The board's decision stands. Deny it on tonight's broadcast, or we're done. Jasper's hands clenched under the table. Deny the man who had been his home for 5 years? He walked out without answering, the ultimatum burning in his chest. Back at the apartment, Ezra waited with fresh coffee and open arms. They talked for hours, voices rising and falling as fear turned to frustration. I can't ask you to give up everything, Ezra said, eyes glistening. Maybe I should leave. The story dies if I'm gone. The suggestion felt like a knife. Jasper pulled him close, the misunderstanding from the media still echoing. People online calling Ezra a gold digger, a distraction. You're not going anywhere, Jasper insisted, but doubt crept in during the silence that followed. Was he being selfish, risking both their futures? That afternoon a package arrived, anonymous. Inside were printed screenshots of private messages between Derek and a tabloid reporter. The rival anchor had tipped them off, jealous of Jasper's primetime slot. Betrayal hit like a wave. Ezra read them over Jasper's shoulder, anger flashing across his face. He smiled at us at the holiday party last year. The revelation shifted something in Jasper. No longer just a victim of circumstance, he saw the calculated cruelty behind the leak. He called Alex immediately. It was Derek. What do I do? Alex's voice was steady. Fight back. But smart. The psychological toll mounted. Jasper replayed every on-air moment, wondering if colleagues had whispered about him. His mother left a voicemail, voice broken. We still love you, but the church, the town is talking. Traditional expectations clashed with the truth he could no longer hide. Ezra suggested they cook together to distract, chopping onions while sharing stories of their early dates, stolen kisses in Central Park at dusk, late night drives up the Hudson. The normalcy felt precious now, fragile. By evening the decision deadline loomed. Jasper sat at the kitchen table drafting statements on his laptop, deleting and rewriting. One version denied everything, another danced around the truth. Ezra watched from the couch, silent support in his presence. Outside, protesters had joined the media, some holding signs demanding honesty, others shouting slurs. The societal pressure pressed against the windows. Jasper closed the laptop. I need air. They slipped out the back alley, walking blocks until they reached the waterfront. The Brooklyn Bridge glowed in the distance, a symbol of connection. Jasper suddenly questioned. If I lose the job, he said, what am I? Just another guy who hid too long. Ezra stopped, turning to face him. You're the man I love. The one who makes me laugh at bad puns and holds me when nightmares come. That's enough. The words anchored him, but the internal conflict raged. Back home, Jasper's phone lit up with a text from his sister. Dad watched the news. He said if you come out, he won't watch anymore. The family fracture deepened. Ezra squeezed his hand. We face it together. Sleep came in fits, dreams mixing broadcast lights with Texas sunsets and Ezra's smile. Morning brought fresh headlines and a new email from the network. Final chance. Tonight's show or goodbye. Jasper stared at the screen, the weight of every choice pressing down. The journey had only just begun, and the path ahead looked darker than ever. The studio lights felt hotter than usual as Jasper prepared for the evening broadcast. He had spent the day in quiet agony, weighing the sacrifice that could save his career against the truth that defined his heart. Ezra had offered again that morning to pack a bag and disappear for a few weeks, letting the story fade. I love you enough to step back, he had said, voice steady despite the tears. Jasper had refused, but the offer lingered like a shadow. Now, minutes before air, he stood in the makeup room staring at his reflection. The man looking back seemed like a stranger, polished, trusted, trapped. The producer knocked. 5 minutes, Jasper. Decision time. He nodded, throat tight. On set the teleprompter scrolled normal news, but his mind raced. Halfway through the segment on city politics, he paused. The red light stayed on. Before we continue, he said, voice breaking the script, I need to address something personal. The control room erupted in frantic signals, but he kept speaking. The photo that surfaced this week is real. I have been in a loving relationship with my partner Ezra for 5 years. He is not a distraction, he is my home. Gasps echoed in the studio. Cameras kept rolling. Jasper's hands trembled, but the words kept coming. I understand this may cost me my job, but I can no longer live a lie. Thank you for trusting me with your evenings. I hope you'll trust me with my truth. The feed cut to commercial, but the damage, or the liberation, was done. Backstage chaos exploded. The executive producer stormed in. You're fired. Effective immediately, security escorted him out past stunned colleagues. Some clapped quietly, others looked away. Outside, Ezra waited in the car, having watched the live stream from the parking garage. They drove home in stunned silence, the city lights blurring past. You did it, Ezra whispered finally. You chose us. Jasper gripped the wheel, adrenaline and terror mixing. The turning point had arrived, and there was no going back. The next days blurred into a whirlwind. News vans multiplied. Jasper's phone rang nonstop, offers from smaller outlets, hate mail, support from strangers. His parents called once, his mother crying, his father silent. We're praying, was all they managed. The family expectations that had shaped his life now felt like chains breaking. Alex showed up with takeout and solidarity. You're braver than I could ever be. But the betrayal still stung when Derek released a statement distancing himself from the situation. Jasper confronted the truth in therapy sessions. Ezra encouraged him to attend. I sacrificed my authenticity for approval, he admitted one evening. Now I have to live with the consequences. Ezra remained the constant, cooking meals, fielding calls, reminding Jasper of the small joys they had almost lost. One night, they danced slowly in the living room to an old song, the same one from their first date. Whatever comes next, Ezra said, we face it as equals. The psychological growth was tangible. Jasper no longer flinched at his reflection. He started writing, drafting a memoir chapter about the night he came out on air. The station's decision had backfired. Public support poured in, sponsors wavered, and the network faced backlash of its own. Jasper watched the storm he had unleashed with a strange calm. The major turning point had changed his fate, and though the road ahead was uncertain, the man beside him made every risk feel worth it. Yet new challenges emerged. A former colleague leaked old emails suggesting Jasper had used company time for personal matters, another misunderstanding that required lawyers and late-night strategy sessions. Ezra stood by him through depositions, their bond strengthening under fire. Late one evening, after signing paperwork, Jasper looked at Ezra across the table. I almost let fear win. Thank you for not letting me. The sacrifice had been mutual, the love tested and proven. The journey continued, but for the first time Jasper felt truly free. Weeks turned into a new rhythm. Jasper woke each morning without the weight of pretense, though the financial reality of unemployment hit hard. Savings dwindled, but Ezra's freelance work kept them afloat. They sold the second car, simplified meals, and found laughter in the small things. Lazy Sundays reading on the balcony, planning future road trips now that secrets no longer bound them. The societal pressure had not vanished. Online trolls still surfaced, and Jasper's parents sent a single card saying, "Only we miss you." Yet support grew from unexpected places. A national LGBTQ organization invited him to speak. Alex organized a small gathering of friends, toasting the courage that had inspired them all. Then the real blow came. Derek, facing internal investigation for the leak, released a final statement claiming Jasper had forced him to stay silent about the relationship. The accusations spread like wildfire, creating fresh misunderstandings. Jasper sat in the living room rereading the article, anger rising. He's trying to ruin what's left. Ezra read it beside him, then closed the laptop. We fight with truth, not more lies. Together they drafted a response, posting it on Jasper's new personal social media. The post went viral, thousands sharing stories of their own hidden lives. The psychological shift was profound. Jasper no longer hid behind a screen. He faced the camera again, this time his own phone, recording a calm video explaining the betrayal and his growth. The response flooded in positively. Former viewers wrote letters thanking him for representation. Ezra's family flew in for a weekend, filling the apartment with laughter and acceptance that contrasted sharply with the silence from Texas. Jasper's sister called privately one night. Dad watches your videos when mom's asleep. He's proud but scared to say it. The crack in the family wall gave Jasper hope. He and Ezra took a day trip to the beach, walking barefoot along the shore. "Remember when we couldn't do this in daylight?" Ezra asked. Jasper smiled, squeezing his hand. The journey of self-discovery had led them here, stronger, visible, unashamed. Yet one final test remained. The network, facing lawsuits and sponsor loss, reached out through lawyers. They offered reinstatement with conditions, no on-air mention of personal life. Jasper read the email aloud to Ezra over dinner. "They still don't get it." The decision was easy. He declined, choosing instead to launch a podcast about authentic living. The first episode featured Ezra as a guest, their chemistry natural and warm. Listeners connected instantly. The betrayal, the sacrifice, the misunderstandings, all had forged something unbreakable. Jasper stood on their balcony that night, city lights stretching endlessly. The man who once feared exposure now embraced the spotlight on his own terms. Ezra joined him, arms around his waist. We made it through the storm. The emotional climax had passed, leaving clarity and peace. The road ahead held promise, and for the first time Jasper believed acceptance was not a destination but a daily choice they would keep making together. Months later, the apartment felt like home again, not a battlefield. Jasper's podcast had grown into a platform reaching millions, sponsors knocking instead of fleeing. Ezra's photography exhibitions now featured their joint story, subtle images of intertwined hands against city backdrops, capturing the beauty of quiet resilience. They traveled openly, hand in hand at events, the fear replaced by quiet pride. Family progress came slowly. Jasper's father sent a text on his birthday. "Proud of the man you've become." Tears followed, but healing had begun. One crisp autumn evening, they hosted a small dinner. Alex, Ezra's sister, a few new friends from the podcast community. Laughter filled the room as stories flowed, the old rifts mended by time and truth. Jasper looked across the table at Ezra, the man who had stood through every storm, and felt overwhelming gratitude. The journey that began with a leaked photo had reshaped everything: career, family, self. He had learned that actions carried consequences, but decisions rooted in love built legacies. The societal pressure still existed, but they navigated it together, stronger for every challenge. As guests left and the apartment quieted, Jasper and Ezra stepped onto the balcony once more. The New York skyline glittered, a reminder of the city that had witnessed their greatest test. "We did it," Jasper said softly. Ezra rested his head on his shoulder. "We're just getting started." The emotional arc had completed its circle, from hidden fear to open love, from loss to renewal. The bonds that survived proved unbreakable, the growth undeniable. True or false? A man's love for another man can survive the storm of public scrutiny and professional ruin in contemporary society?